I'm going to be, or we are going to be talking about the notorious Sekhmet-Aquarius comparison that had my page on fire for a little bit. I had quite a few people
Yes, yes.
hit me up about this, so I wanted to definitely get give you guys the full explanation on what it was and what it meant when I did that comparison and broke it down that way. And I still stand by it. But again, here we are joined with my special guest here, Age of Serpent.
Yes. Yes. Hello. Nice to
Absolutely.
be on your podcast. Nice to talk to you again. And yeah, this is what a wonderful day too. It's Thursday, so it's
Hmm.
day of Jupiter. Wonderful day to discuss like topics about spirituality, science, and mysticism, higher education, and stuff.
Absolutely. So let me tell you, in case people don't know, um, so Age of Serpent was in my he was in my comments when I had the post really going on fire. And do you remember some of the things you said on the comments?
I think so. I was basically talking about like the difference was like tropical versus well no, it wasn't tropical, it was more about the seasons, which is basically like the tropics.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um Basically the tropical belt of the zodiac and yeah, in relation to Sekhmet
Hmm.
and
And you're
how
right,
she
by the way.
represents.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think we're both right in different ways. It all depends
Right.
on this perspective that you're coming from. Especially like how we were saying, with the ancestors, it's all the different calendars and all the different systems. It's mainly about association and what you're trying to get across, and how you use the netters and correspondence.
Hmm.
Also, you can just call me Ishtari if you don't want to call me Age of the Serpent all the time. I know that's pretty lengthy.
So yeah, I've never met Ishtar. We did have a conversation prior to this podcast, but the one thing that stood out to me about Ishtar is the fact that he brought a perspective that wasn't, um, or even in some of the comments, I had people comment on my thing, and I'm fine with a challenge, but it's one thing to challenge, and then you don't want to hear another perspective. So yeah, I had to have. It was some people who commented, and they completely disabled their at feature, so I couldn't ask them back. So I was like, well,
Oh,
that's not very. It's not very knowledgeable. You
unfortunate.
can't
Right.
really learn or get a different perspective. We are spiritualists. I was going to be pretty nice. I just wanted to explain my perspective.
Right, 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 exactly, yeah.
And so Ishtar stood out because he was definitely given on an open perspective, and he did not disable his app. I hit him up a day later, and I said, yeah, I think I want to have you on the podcast so we can really, uh, you know, give the full spectrum of what it is to be a Kemetic spiritualist, especially when it comes to astrology. And
Absolutely.
he was very open minded to that, and as I thought he would be. And so now we're here. So I
Yes.
did want to, with that being said, I do want you to explain to my audience who you are and aspects of our spirituality.
Yeah, of course. So, yeah, no, my name's Ishtari. Some people may formally know me as Timmy, although sometimes I still go by that name. And so, yeah, I've been studying astrology for a couple of years now. I think it's going on about like close to three. I've been like a practicing occultist for some time as well. So I've had that sort of background that sort of led me into astrology, and I couldn't be more grateful for that because that was a blessing in and of itself. It just adds to all the other spiritual components. And I don't know, anything else would be like basically, I've always grown up with like spiritual and religious like family members as well. Like my family like was, um, so I grew up in church, as like many of us do. And my dad's side was actually is very Catholic, and then my mother's side is apostolic. So that was interesting growing up with that. So I've had a little bit of like everything mixed into the jumble and the gist as many of us do. So and astrology is just like a beautiful cap on top of all that, and I use that in alignment with my spiritual practice and stuff like that. So yeah, I've been doing that for some time now. I do birth charts and I also do tarot and oracle work and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. If you follow my page, you know that a lot of my followers already knew my perspective, but I was getting a lot of comments from new followers or just new people in
Like
general to
passing
my
by
page,
your page.
passing by on my page, that were just chiming in, either agreeing or disagreeing. Um, and so, I just thought, I have a podcast, I have a platform. Why not just give a great explanation? My perspective on this comes from the fact that I did have a comparison with Sekhmet and Aquarius. So I'm going to break that down. We have to understand that the Egyptians came from the south. You know, it's been solidified and vetted in scholarship and academia that they were likely a group of African people from all over Africa. I'm talking West, Southwest, East Africa as well. Um,
Yeah,
South
Great Lakes
Africa,
region.
and they pretty much gathered around the Great Lakes region, and they built their civilization up, and that's what likely would be the pre-dynastic um, settlements and civilizations of what we now call Kemet or Egypt. They made their way, from our perspective, up into Sudan, into what they call upper part of Egypt, which is really south from our perspective today. Largely a lot of the um, surviving art and iconography and things of that nature and surviving evidence is based in the south of Egypt, not in the north. So
Yes, yes.
when you seen them building their pyramids north of Egypt, from our perspective, it was actually south for them. So when they started to build those the Great Pyramids of Giza and on down, they wanted to build it up towards their perspective of the motherland going south for us. So we have to remember when we're talking about this perspective, Egyptians, it's in total reversal to our perspective, even when it comes to north and south. So
Absolutely.
Upper Egypt is actually south for us for our perspective, and then Lower Egypt is north from our perspective, and that goes for the same thing when it comes to the hemisphere and the seasons. We're in the right now we're in winter, right? And then so again, if we're talking reverse, they would right now be in summer. So I think, and that's why people were got a little bit more confused because they see Sekhmet and they think of the sun. Obviously, they think of summer, of course. Um, Amun Ra, who created Sekhmet. So yeah, that perspective is correct. But I'm talking when I gave that perspective on Sekhmet, it was from the African Kemetic calendar and how right now we are in Haru Leo as it stands in January for us. January going from Capricorn into Aquarius. During that particular moment, we were in Aquarius in the northern hemisphere. We were in Leo for the southern hemisphere. I just brought together the physical attribution for what that would be for a Leo being the lion. So I brought in that attribution with Sekhmet, the attribution with Aquarius as well, since we are in North America. And so I thought it was pretty nice to have that dynamic to have Sekhmet carrying around the water bearer attribution. Controversial on purpose. So that's why I kind of knew I had to break it down. So when you seen how I wrote it, I did give a little bit of that insight. And it's fun and games, but it brings about good conversation.
Yeah, it brings about wonderful, yeah, great conversation. Especially like in the Kemetic community, it's always great to have different perspectives. And bring in different aspects because the culture itself is like forward moving and it's like eclectic in its nature as well. So yeah, it's always
Yeah,
just about building and growing.
absolutely. And I think that's why, you know, this astrology is so interesting. We have to open our minds about when we're thinking about the southern hemisphere in comparison to, we're not, when you think about the months we were born in, we're not who we think we are, really. So we can really break that down in another episode. A lot of people just continue to have this perspective on the Julian calendar or the Gregorian calendar, and the basis
Yeah.
of the Kemetic calendar is totally different. And you have to really think about the fact that the oldest calendar that we know of today is Adam's calendar, found in South Africa.
Yes, yes, yes.
And or we even think about Naphtali.
That's yeah, that sounds about right. I think you were right on that.
Yeah, and so the whole point is that these old calendars predate any revisionist calendar. So we have to
Absolutely.
revise, we have to rework how we're really thinking about our perspective on these calendars, because
Yeah.
yeah, unfortunately these
Especially,
these.
yeah, when we're looking at the Gregorian calendar, like how you're saying, like the Julian Gregorian calendar, it was a lot of that too, like comes into the Romans, and it was like based upon like taxes and like taxing the
Oh yeah.
citizens and things like that. So there's so many correlations. Also, like the new year starts in winter as opposed to it starting in um, the the spring equinox as it would have in different cultures and stuff like that as well. So
So we have to call it what it is. It was completely revised and it was appropriated.
yes,
Now, the I will say, obviously, yes, the Greeks and the Romans, they did learn from the Egyptians, but it's one thing to learn, but they completely revised it. They completely appropriated it and they turned it into their own perspective, and decided to do away with the original thought and point of view, and then appropriate it to their vision, and that's what we're calling today, what we call whitewashing. And the Greeks, there was no longer this friendly relationship between Egyptians and the Greeks, especially towards the later parts, that brought it to its end.
once they realized that they couldn't bribe or really try to soak up as much information as they could from the priest, especially the Amun priesthood at the end that were not giving them as much information as they wanted. They um, by the time of the Roman occupation, it was over because the Romans weren't having it from the Greeks, and they definitely weren't going to have it from the ancestors. So it was a wrap once the Romans had it. They were like, no, we're shutting everything down. We're shutting the temples down.
Right. And I think it's
Yeah.
even interesting the fact that it's not really interesting. It's really a shame that so
Yeah.
many stolen artifacts, including the last known zodiac that we've at least found so far, from the Temple of Zendera, that is housed over in Europe. They completely took it apart and placed it over and shipped it over to Europe, and stolen artifacts for amusement, and not even just amusement, actually, for cash cow payments. You get a lot of money
Yeah.
from people visiting these museums,
Yeah.
um,
Pulling in tourism.
and
Exactly.
pulling in tourism. And that's the same reason why you have a lot of the Egyptian government wanting to completely gatekeep the Egyptian or Kemetic culture.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, also, I would like to add in just a tip that we had for the day. When I knew that we were having the podcast, I looked up some like the degrees that we were having today, as I sometimes do. I don't always get to like get as detailed into my astrology, but I do like have my journal and stuff when I write down like the degrees and whatnot.
Hmm.
And so coincidentally today, well, I guess not coincidentally because there are no coincidences,
Oh
right?
no! Right, right, right.
Today,
No, no, no.
so, as we would say, like in the tropical zodiac today is, well, where the sun is in Aquarius. And so the sun is actually at 13 degrees of Aquarius. And today is a Thursday, which is the day of Jupiter. And then also the moon is in Cancer today. at 12 degrees, and beautifully enough, 12 to 13 degrees is um, basically the very precise conjunction to the stars, the fixed star Sirius, which is
Mm.
Sopdet
Yep, there we go.
in the Kemetic tradition.
There we
So
go.
we have a beautiful correlation with that today. Not only is it Thursday, so we're like bringing in the energy of expansion and wisdom and learning and growth, but we're also having it in Sirius, which is such a powerful day, and especially for me as like a devotee of Aset, that's a beautiful like number. I was like, oh, that's such a beautiful degree to have today. So, also, if anyone's listening, if you have any placements in Cancer, like if you have a planet in your natal chart in Cancer, if it's at 12 degrees or 13, usually within about 5 to 8 degrees, that you can call that a close conjunction.
Mm.
Um, so that's one of the ways to tell that if one of your placements in your natal chart is conjunct one of the stars or a fixed star, even.
And I brought you guys somebody really knowledgeable, so I picked right. You know, when I'm
Oh, thank
doing,
you.
I think my audience is going to enjoy you because again, when I wanted to have this conversation, again, I wanted to pick somebody I thought was knowledgeable and also very open minded. And I was talking to him earlier about confirmation bias. And so when we understand how that affects us, we're going to be much more open to ideas. So I do want to challenge people to open up your minds.
Absolutely, and
So,
I loved what you were saying, the correlation between because I did read the post that you had before I did comment. I know because a lot of people don't even read stuff. Sometimes they just comment and just like
oh yeah,
go in. You know how trolls are on social media.
yeah.
But no, I love your post and I love all your products. I was just talking to you before we started the podcast, and I was like, oh yeah, I definitely need to go and grab some things from you because you have some wonderful stuff on there. But yeah, I love the correlation between Sekhmet and Uranus. I think that was a really like profound one.
Hmm.
Because Sekhmet as a deity, as a netter, right? She can represent so many of the planets that we have within the solar system. Um, the moon could definitely be one, like the darkening of the moon. Like we have the story of Sekhmet getting enraged at humanity and being the daughter of Ra and being sent down and drinking
Right,
so much blood that she engulfed everybody. And that sort of represents the darkening of the moon or like the new moon.
right.
What a lot of people would call like dark goddesses and stuff like that, like in the correlation to Hecate or Kali and things that we find in different traditions. And Uranus would be one of shock and terror and revolution and change, and so that definitely fits Sekhmet in her energy. Because when Sekhmet walks in, when she comes in, nothing's staying the same. When Sekhmet energy enters into your life, it's nothing's staying the same. So Uranus is definitely one. We have the moon as well. There's definitely the correlation also with Saturn, right? Because when we think about the energy of Sekhmet and the color is red for Sekhmet, and we think about the root
Hmm.
chakra. The root
Yep.
chakra is the red chakra that we have. The root chakra is connected to Aquarius, is also connected to Capricorn, and it's also connected to Scorpio as well. So we have all of those combinations, dealing with that those primal urges, those instincts, foundation stability, um, in the Orisha tradition, for example, like Oya
Hmm.
would be also
Right,
correlating to the root chakra. So uh, that power of like financial stability and like really going out into the world and feeling safe and secure in your body and your senses and things like that. So Pluto would also be a great planet for Sekhmet as well. How we were saying like the root chakra correlates to Scorpio. So yeah, all the netters have a wonderful like combination of different planets that work together. So we'll find them in all types of different ways and correlations and charts that we can um, assign them to, especially in accordance to the zodiac and for the fixed stars as well. So yeah, I really loved that you placed it with Uranus. I thought that was a really great attribution to segment.
so wait, so when we're talking about Sekhmet, does Sekhmet really pop up in your personality every now and then? We know how she can be.
Yes, yes, yes. I definitely so Sekhmet is I'm definitely in connection with Sekhmet for me as a practitioner. Sekhmet does come up often. Um, she definitely loves pomegranate juice and the combination of pomegranate and beer, I would say. So, but yeah, she definitely pops up as a defiance against anything that's any type of system or governance, especially in the times that we find ourselves in now,
Hmm.
to be revolutionary, to be independent, and to not go with the grain, but to go against the grain, because so often we find ourselves in, especially in the systems that we live in now, that there's so much change and so much adversity to people and common people, and we find ourselves in the midst of all this, chaos of government and despite what we how lovely our personal lives may be, there are also like so many social changes and things like that, which also brings into Aquarius and like the root chakra, right? Like the need to feel stable, the need to feel secure. So often we talk about anxiety and things like that. That those are a lot of root chakra things that deal with Sekhmet as well. So
Yeah, and then Sekhmet can be a bit polarizing as well, depending on the person, because
absolutely,
when we're talking about Sekhmet, the Egyptians weren't a warlike people. They were not a people of conquest. They didn't even stretch much far outside of what we know of as Egypt today. They pretty much kept in their borders. I mean, as far as they've extended into was mostly just maybe just the Sinai region into what we call West Asia today, Southwest Asia.
yeah, yeah, the Levant and
And
whatnot. Yeah.
so this Sinai region, even that was only built for the most part for military base. I remember I looked into Menuhotep, a military surgeon in a way to really keep outsiders from that region
Absolutely.
out of Egypt from coming in. But that was only even after invasive species, or I don't want to call them invasive species, but invasive people started to really hone in on Egypt. Now,
Oh, absolutely.
they considered Lower Egypt, even though it was not as populated as Upper Egypt. Obviously, it's still within what they defined would to be theirs over in the Delta as well. Sekhmet was subjected to these warlike foreigners. So
Oh,
when we're
absolutely.
talking about these Assyrians who they've had a lot of battles with, um, these Persians and what have you, a lot of these people, they felt like in death, these people who were warlike, like Sekhmet, will be subjected to her, and the Egyptians and other peoples much further south, maybe even to the west of them, being the Libu or Libyans, more so subjected to Osiris, having that afterlife, going through um, uh, the duat or the field of reeds for a more heavenly experience.
Right,
But
right.
um, so yeah, it's very interesting just to feel how certain people have a certain perspective and how they view Sekhmet and how she was as a particular deity at that point.
Yeah, she's definitely all the deities definitely have their dual aspects, and Sekhmet is definitely one of them. We can also see that in like the combination between Bastet and Sekhmet, and
Hmm.
um, knowing that in the beginnings of time, especially the further south we go down, north for our ancestors, but south for us, right? The further
Hmm.
south we go, we see Sekhmet, whereas the further north we would go, the more we would see Bastet, the more calmer, um, gentler aspect, and we can see how that much more older aspect was very much glorifying the female in her abilities
Hmm.
to be wild and formidable and capable of doing like great things and powerful things that we don't often see other places of the world as well. It's very primordial, instinctive energy that's like really beautiful and really interesting to take note of, especially when we think of like the Kandake queens and things like that. It was we also see like Shemsu, which was also a lion netter, and what was the other one? Oh, a Petamak actually, which is the four-armed lion deity that we find in I believe in Nubia. That we a lot of people often don't talk about a Petamak often, but Petamak's really interesting because you
Hmm.
have the four arms that make the X sign,
Yeah.
and that's actually one of the deities that we have in Africa that actually resembles one of the deities that we'll later see like throughout time in places in India, where how we see like Kali having, you know, the four arms or the multiple arm deities that they have over there. So I always think that like that one, that interesting little tidbit is cool too. And gonna say like some astrology points to add in since we were talking about astrology.
Hmm.
Um, um, what was it? Yeah, so the so how you were saying about the correlation between Uranus and also Aquarius. So we have the sign of Uranus right now is in Taurus right now for our tropical zodiac, and
Mm.
the traditional ruler in astrology, what we would call traditional ruler, is Saturn for Aquarius, and so Saturn is in Aquarius right now. So
There we go.
for anybody in their natal chart, Saturn right now, Saturn represents blessings and wisdom, discipline, karma, morality, obligations, authority, very deep and heavy things, things that come with a lot of lessons in life and transformation. Things that also represent Sekhmet, how we were talking about earlier. And Uranus is in Taurus, so Uranus represents abruptness, and how we were saying when Sekhmet comes in, things are bound to change. So right now Uranus is in Taurus, so a lot of things right now for a lot of people could be changing in terms of Taurus related things. So their possessions and our um, the way that we view our daily habits, eating, our physical fitness, even some things in terms of like relationships, because Taurus is ruled by Venus. So there's that aspect there as well. Um, yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit of that in there since we were talking about astrology.
Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely appreciated. I'm glad you definitely are defining the astrology here for that perspective. People really want to engage in that. But I also, it's funny, Sekhmet is a female, and a lot of these cultures they want to make Egyptian um, didn't really hold females in powerful positions. It's very much an African position or tradition to even have females be have a strong stance on their feminine attributes, but also still be and capable of the things that Sekhmet represents. So I just thought that that's interesting, and even the other queens as well. You think of the even the all female warriors that you would see across Africa as well. So yeah, that perspective is very interesting. That I think it really codifies the fact that this is a nation of people who have a continued culture of not treating the woman as a damsel in distress
Oh yeah,
or
absolutely.
a second class citizen.
Especially of those that like of us that have black mothers, we know that sometimes they are nowhere near damsel in distress, and that we know how they can be. So very much can are able to take charge and hold up the family and things like that when necessary and when possible. So um, Sekhmet, yeah, Sekhmet definitely represents that energy, but she's also a nurturing mother and those aspects as well. That's the beautiful thing about the culture, right? Is that it was layer of complexity on top of complexity. So, um, as powerful and as physical and as robust she could be, she could also be sweet and calm and nurturing, even in the lion form before she even gets to the Bastet variations as well, where we
Hmm.
get to more of the like lunar and the more like Venusian aspects, where she's more like an Oshun from the Orisha type of character.
Hmm.
Um, she still has her feminine wiles, and also that red dress and like the red sun is like very
Hmm.
representative of the like how Sekhmet also represents the Leo season and like summer solstice. She also more the summer solstice for Sekhmet is definitely what we would say like the peak of the female cycle, right? When the red flows from, from the woman and she becomes enraged or she becomes full of desire or um, full of so many things. And that emotional aspect takes on, and that's definitely a beautiful like trait as well.
But yeah, I did want to make sure people understood that that reverse aspect and perspective, the southern hemisphere versus the northern hemisphere, we're always going to be in a reverse season. As we are in winter, they are in the summer. That Leo, what still stays true to what I was trying to portray there from in that January Haru Leo combination there. And again, Sekhmet was just for me that physical representation that I really wanted for my post for that time. So yeah, I did want to thank Ishtari as well. This was a great
Yeah, of course.
conversation. I look forward to having more conversations with you, maybe even later this month.
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
Yeah, possible.
more comedic conversations. And can they find you on social media?
Yeah, so on social, you guys can find me on Instagram and also through TikTok. So the name would be Age of the Serpent. That's AGEOFTHE SERPENT. So Age of the Serpent. And then you guys can also DM me through Instagram, also through Gmail. So that would be ageoftheserpent@gmail.com for bookings or for readings. I do natal birth chart readings as well as tarot and oracle and spiritual advisory and things like that. So yeah, thank you for having me on. This was a wonderful conversation.
Absolute, absolute, Ishtari. So yeah, I look forward to it, and then I will be hitting you up soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm wonderful. I'm excited. Thank you for having me on the podcast.
Find full episodes of the podcast featuring straight facts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Also, check out our Instagram for more Maroc Horus content, including the shop and our subscription service for exclusives. Peace, Mer. I'm on Maroc.